That'd be the simplest way to do
Yeah.
it.
Did anything jump out at you, Cindy?
A few things, and maybe as we go through it, we can talk about it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But for a county administrator, I mean, that is a quick, easy change.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing.
Commissioner of Revenue, I personally hate to see these departments nickel and dime themselves to death, and that's really what they're doing. Well, you know, at year end, when we always have some departments go over and others go under,
And we can,
and we transfer between departments, they're cutting out they are literally cutting out every bit of flexibility they have.
yeah.
Commissioner of Revenue is always one who always spends under what we give her, but we use that money to help EMS or help transfer station year after year. And she is really putting it down to bare bones.
Yeah.
I guess this year we find ourselves in the same situation. We're looking at contingency.
Well, we always use contingency up, and then we transfer from departments.
So the deeper.
We're talking about an end of the year
Yeah.
appropriation because of going into the hole.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the sheets and how it very well explained.
Yeah.
And before we go any further, Dr. Millsaps and I have one other thing to share with you, and it's really great news. Eric Branscombe, you know how he keeps coming and talking to you about the delinquent court funds that he is able to generate for us? That's $101,000 in that fund that we have not tapped. And so he went in and checked the regulations, and that is available for us to use without any restrictions. And that's not built into this budget.
You mean on anything?
Yes.
Yeah, if I might just share, it's not committed, it's not historically been committed, it just accumulates. It's effectively 17.5% of what they bring in. The rest ends up going to the Commonwealth, but that's the portion that we get to keep. And depending on the year, the stream has been, the last couple of years, the stream has been somewhere between 7,000 and 11,000. Of course, it's been a little bit less this last year and a half or so. So that 100,000 is several years of accumulation and clearly one-time money.
Right.
But it's a pretty sizable one-time allocation, and then potentially a stream of, to me now we're thinking around maybe $5,000 to kind of start and just see what happens there, because it all depends on how aggressive they are, how people's behaviors in the county. And he also pointed out in my conversation with him about this, and of course you might see some other jurisdictions' numbers are higher, and that often has to do because they have an interstate.
Right.
People come through, and then later they find out, I should have paid that. So it has, that's why if you look at some of our other surrounding counties, the numbers won't be as big. But nonetheless, it's been consistent.
That's very true, because I took a trip to Chihuahua the other day, and there was a lot of revenue generated.
Oh, yeah.
Every little hill had a revenue generator.
Oh, yeah. Even on the entrance ramps to the interstate.
Look at that section right there where 77 gets 81. You better be looking out.
With and Smith, the generator.
Well, there's Tennessee, but you better watch.
Yeah, indeed.
You better watch when you get to Tennessee too.
Yeah, with and Smith.
So we did have somebody that came to see me today that already wanted to know if you would like to spend that additional funding on their program. So when we get there, we can talk about that. But just so you know, word is out about that. And
Really?
And then, if I might, since we were talking specifically about the Commissioner of Revenue position, she has been really helpful in trying to work through some of the issues and think through some of the issues if you all were to eventually move forward on a cigarette tax.
Right.
And we've been talking now about trying to work a little better together as it relates to making sure people, as you know, you all passed an ordinance that if you have a festival, you have to submit everything to us, and we have, Kevin and I sat down with some folks already, walked through that. And then I'll notify them that there's a festival coming, so the folks that work out of the Commissioner of Revenue can immediately get their packet that tells them, oh, by the way, we have these other things.
Right.
So that'll hopefully, that partnership will help make sure everybody that's supposed to be paying is paying.
Good. Excellent.
One other thing that brought to mind. Years ago, Joe, you might remember this. I don't know if anybody else is on the board remember this, but we either discussed or we passed an ordinance allowing fire departments to bill insurance for calls. So, for example, if a accident happened and you had 2 trucks there for 2 hours, and you could bill the automotive
Right.
the at-fault person for the time that
Fire
as
department.
a revenue. It was in line with the way that we bill for EMS, but it was, the thought was the same way for, to do for fire as we do in EMS with soft billing, was if you have insurance, you pay, and homeowners insurance too if you have a fire at your house.
Right.
But if you didn't, you wouldn't hard bill, or you go after somebody that didn't have, somebody had a farm building burned down, didn't have insurance on it, you wouldn't just harass them to get the $500, but it was a way to generate revenue for the fire department. I don't know if we've ever pursued that really. Do you remember anything about that, Joe? Or?
I was trying to remember how we.
We had a discussion about it. I don't remember if we ever did anything.
I don't think we ever passed it, you
Okay.
know.
I don't read it.
Well, I thought about the other day when just looking at all the calls, and it's like less and less fires and houses, more and more automobile accidents.
And fire is being dispatched.
And fires being dispatched, and they're working traffic control and a bunch of things. And, everybody
Yeah,
drives
I
on the road has insurance, so it's not like you'd be.
Just first thing.
Well, if they don't, then we should work on
Most people.
Most people.
any responsible person to drive.
I can vouch the one that didn't.
So it wouldn't be necessarily a tax on citizens, it would be on their,
Yeah.
I don't know, just a
So
thought.
fee instead of a tax.
Well, it would go on,
Absolutely.
an insurance company would pay for it. I mean, if you have a wreck and there's already $30,000 worth of damage and an extra $500, it's going to make or break somebody, an insurance company.
What do you take with a hazmat spill while you wait for somebody to come in and clean it up? They're tied up, sitting there.
And it could even go down to, I even thought about it in the last ice storm up there.
Yeah.
You had Alco's lines across the road, and
The fire
fire department sitting there 4 or 5 hours blocking traffic.
Yeah.
Well, you've got 2 trucks and at least 2 or 3 people out there. I mean, that's something you may be able to bill Alco for.
Yeah.
Do you recall if y'all explored that with Jim Cornwell or Steve or
And
whoever?
once so far, my memory was we had an ordinance, whether it passed or not, I can't remember.
I guess we have to look up the ordinance,
But
huh?
I thought it was one of those the state had given us
Power.
the power to, and we were discussing whether or not to do it. I may be completely off base, I don't know, but
Have you tried it?
I can't remember us ever passing.
Be worth looking into.
Absolutely.
Just don't hold me to that because, I'm at that age 14 years ago.
Hey,
well, I may be thinking something totally different. Maybe it's something we talked about.
But I
We wish
tell
we
you
had
what.
power.
Well, maybe you dreamt it and it's a good one.
It'd be worth checking into.
Absolutely.
I'll grab some weird stuff.
Revelation.
Chelsea woke me up this other morning. I was in the corner, I sleepwalked in the corner of the bedroom looking for a baby calf. What are you doing? I said, you need to get more sleep.
How funny if you'd have found one.
Yeah, that would have been. Oh, okay.
Sorry to derail us.
Well, are you saying just use a portion of that 100,000, or are you saying,
That's up to you.
because that 100,000 right there covers the Lucas and the cameras automatically?
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
It is available as
And it's
one-time
one-time
fund,
expense.
Yeah.
and it is sitting there.
And I'll tell you what, those 2 things are so important in my book.
I would take it, but, I mean, I was concerned about those 2, but, looking at the grand scheme, but if we can take 100,000 from that and use it for that,
And the amount of revenue and the revenue side that would cover those 2
Right.
yeah,
equal amounts.
yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's really important, those two items,
Put
just
that, put that
really,
Lucas back in and put the
cameras
cameras
back in.
and take the money out of that 100,000.
I mean, the cameras to protect everyone is so important in this day and age.
I will tell you, the folks that came to see me today were from the drug court. So,
Well,
Well, yeah.
just so, and I asked, how do we get on the list of possible budget items? And someone in the send me an email that I can share with you all about the request, but they came
let's
to
see, under the sheriff.
I mean, everything you say,
Drug court.
So I want to make sure though that I was giving my word and told you all that they can, and
Yeah, so,
And, where is that?
page, oh, it's not
I
right.
don't have a number, there it is, medical services, put that back in, yeah. And that takes care of the two of the grant situations too, right?
Yep, yeah, I think it's important.
Win-win all the way around.
Yep,
And that's only gonna come to about 41,000, so that still leaves money in that 100,000 if we wanna put other things back in.
Just so you can also add 5,000 a year in
In the
recurring.
right,
revenue side.
right. Just 5, huh?
Yeah. He's collected 10 one year, 7,500 another year, and he's, it was 11,000 the first year, 7,500 the next year, and probably would have been 10 if COVID hadn't hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this has come, and he said, just be on the safe side until we really get a feel.
Just
by
do
the- yeah.
Go with 5, because when they open the jury trials and the court system back up, it's gonna be wild.
I know.
And just the only thing you're concerned is where they changed the law last year, allowing their services and losing the fines and all that.
Well, that's true too. They
Yeah.
impacted.
How much that's going to impact.
But if you're working a job, it's hard to do community service. Sometimes it's easier just to pay the fine.
Depends on who's.
I know.
Their case.
I know.
And also, I mean, probably a lot of people that are in that position are
Sure.
fully employed in a way, in some cases.
Sometimes.
There'll
Many.
be a lot of cases for that.
Yeah.
Back to Commissioner of Revenue and Treasurer, do you wanna take those cuts, or do you want to put them back in?
Well, did anybody go anywhere?
Not this past year.
So does she have $750 still in her budget? Like the treasurer? She didn't go anywhere.
You're talking about on the training.
Travel, education, and seminars, yeah.
I mean, they're just literally cutting things totally out, but
Yeah.
will they need it in the future?
yeah, I would anticipate that many associations will go back to doing at least some in person within FY '22. Particularly given, the governor seems to be a
Yeah.
little bit more, willing to open things up. The other thing related to that, Cindy and I have talked about a little bit, of course, as you all have noted before, gas prices continue to
Yes.
move up. And so some of these cuts that are to travel, and, they're really, for our folks, a lot of that is money.
Yeah.
And so we may end up having to put money back for a lot of things at the end of the year.
Well, I was kind of concerned about this DMV firewall software maintenance. Anytime I see software maintenance being cut, that's not a good idea, excuse me, that's not a good idea at
As
all.
of the end of February, back to your question, travel, education, meals, and lodging in the treasurer's office, year to date, they spent $185
Yeah.
out of the $1,000 that was budgeted.
It's hard to take this year and
Yeah, I know it is.
I don't know, for me, it's hard to, those offices have always been,
Yeah, they have.
as long as the current people have been there, really before, have been, some of those steady,
Conservative, yeah.
fiscally just
Right.
consistent offices. It's really hard to say, we're gonna cut a couple $1,000 and then knowing that they're down to
Yeah,
pennies now, they're trying to wiggle.
yeah. And of course, if you all at some point do go forward with the cigarette tax, then that'll put a,
Sure.
it'll put
It'll
in on.
both of those offices.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually they'll make money, but.
Right.
There's gonna be expenses to make that money, though.
Correct.
It's one of the deals where you have to spend money, make money.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna have to look, all right, is what you're spending worth whatever you get?
Right.
Oh. Well, I don't know, let's go to the next page, I guess, maybe, I don't know, what do you think? I don't know. I just hate to not,
Okay, electoral board, now that is, and registrar, those are real cuts.
Yeah.
It's totally related to not having to have that third, that August primary. So those, we can take those cuts. And not
that's
hurt
$27,000.
Yeah. And the good news from Amy is that right now, it's still in the budget that the state will fund more of her position.
Yeah.
Because what I've got in there right now is a hefty locality supplement in order to make her position equal to the treasurer's office. But if this current budget gets signed, the state's gonna be doing that and we won't have to.
And from everything I've read, it seems to be moving through so far.
So far. So this is 27,000 and there could be more.
Now, the 11,000 that you're showing there on the registrar's compensation, that doesn't include what you're talking about? The state taking over?
She was, that 11,000, no, that's not. That 11,000 is less, having to have the curbside polling because there won't be that August primary.
Okay.
So that was not the, anything to do with that. A separate issue that Amy has brought up, Phyllis is on our personnel policy, but she is not on the county pay scales, nor is she on the electoral, the elections pay scale. She's out in limbo on nothing. And Amy would like for her to be on the county pay scales.
I thought we did that a couple of years ago.
We put her on the personnel policy, but we did not put her on the pay scales. So Amy chose the one that is closest to what she's currently making, so that she will be on the pay scales along with,
So she's full-time now. but no,
she's
put her on-
full-time.
I think
But
we
she-
let her, we put her full-time and never put on.
Yes.
Wow.
Elections is strange. They're not comp board, they're not local. They're kind of in this no man's land.
Is that what the social services?
Yeah, just like
employees?
ESS.
Everybody needs them, who wants to climb.
Nobody
Yeah,
wants to
that's
stay,
right.
don't want to claim the county, don't want to, but they gotta have them.
But whereas Amy's position is
Right.
paid partially by the state,
Right.
Phyllis's is not paid at all. It is a locally paid position.
Right.
So,
We'll give her a job without money.
well, we gave her a job.
That's
No
compensation.
way to ever get an increase.
Yeah.
Right there. Wow.
Glad you have a job. The other day.
Is she on our benefit package?
Yeah.
So she's got all of that.
She's got all the benefits.
That was true stuff.
Yes, she should be on
Yeah.
Everybody else is getting raised. She should too.
I think she should, needs to be on county policy.
Is that another one?
No, that's there.
Do we need to take action on that?
Or just do it
Well,
incorporate it in the budget? and approve it?
Actually, I've already incorporated it, so it's in there.
It's already.
Yeah, I've already got it. But I wanted to bring that to your attention.
So this 27,000 would not change that then?
Correct.
Okay.
Was that been just an oversight maybe at the time, or was it? It's hard to say.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They didn't specifically, they asked for her to be on the personnel
They didn't
policy,
ask
they
for it.
did not ask that she be on the pay scale. And with them not specifically asking, we did
Yeah.
exactly what they asked.
Yeah, you did exactly.
We tend to do that.
And whether that needs a vote of the board, maybe it does, I don't know.
Well, it would be,
But for the budget purposes, it's in there right now.
the only thing we're doing is giving her, because we've already accepted her as
An employee
an employee, so the only thing we're doing is when we vote on the budget,
is putting her on.
is we're voting for that salary, we're voting for everybody's salary, essentially. So
Right.
that would cover it.
Okay.
So, I think the electoral board and registrar's cuts are,
They're legitimate.
they're legitimate and pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna re-highlight them as a go.
I was curious to the compensation of the circuit court secretary.
Yeah,
Again, this is something, it's not our employee, it's something we pay to an outside vendor. And I guess with court not going on, we have just about not paid anything this year.
But who does that job? Wouldn't that be the role of the circuit court clerk?
I'd have to look to see who it is we pay, but I want to say it's something we pay to another locality or another.
Yeah, I think
The
you're right.
whole sheriff.
I think we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, we may.
And there just hasn't been much this year. I kind of hate to cut it because
Yeah.
next year, we're
Yeah.
going to pick up and be going
well,
like.
of course, I understand not spending it this year,
Right.
but I have no doubt it's gonna be there in the
Yeah.
next budget, so,
Probably come back with a penny.
That's what
Might
I'm
be.
thinking.
Yeah, right.
yeah.
But who does get that money?
I think it's Montgomery County, but I have to look.
I think you're right. I think it's the secretary for we share in the whole.
Got
circuit
it.
court.
Got
We're
it.
wrong about that.
Yeah, okay.
I think
We've talked about it before, I know that.
well,
Okay.
it's like this, if we don't put it in there, then we're gonna be taking it out of contingency.
Right.
Maybe the question would be, if we paid it in this year, do we get that?
We'll
If
have
we
a-
paid it to another entity, would we get that money back for this year, or would we?
Yeah,
Or
since
would
it is
we-
used.
Or have we actually paid it?
You want me to go look right there?
That would be the question.
I mean, it may be that we've already paid it, that it can be carried over
Over
wherever
in
it's
the
at.
next year.
Yes, since nobody's,
Let me check something real quick.
Because I'm sure that's been a part of the 3 appropriations we've done.
oh, yeah.
But if the check was, if they didn't actually ask for it or whatever, then it hadn't been approved, then they hadn't received it. But if they did receive it and didn't use it, then I'm agreeing with Lauren, that could be carried over to.
So I see,
We haven't recorded this again,
I see Steve did come back with the stuff.
Expenditure report.
This year we have not paid it at all. We haven't spent
Just
anything
being
out of
funny.
it this year.
We could keep Steve's bill to the budget purpose.
Yeah, right, yeah, and that's true.
It's been appropriated, it just hasn't been sent.
We have not spent any of it, so at the end of the year, we can carry it over to next year. Or use it to
Or
cover
use it
some
to
other
balance
department.
this.
Yeah, right. Okay,
I kinda think we need to have it in
I
the next
agree.
budget, because
yeah,
otherwise, the next year,
Right.
we're gonna say.
It'll be like vengeance.
Yeah.
cool. Justin, you said that, right? Come back at.
If we put that back in the budget, then we need to be sure and remember not to, if we get a request for carryover, not to approve it, and let that money go in the fund balance.
Right.
The reoccurring ones, well, we know it's gonna be reoccurring, it's hard to, all you're doing is setting yourself up for the following year to really.
Mark that one out, and put it back in.
And kind of the same thing with the circuit court clerk microfilm.
Yeah.
Yeah, why would you do? That's the only place you could cut, huh?
Yeah.
Well, she didn't ask for any increase over last year's budget either.
Yeah.
Right, I know,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I can't see, so we actually, we're not gonna go with the microfilm, right?
We're gonna put both of those back in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
He's only spent $659 out of $2,000 budget this year.
For microfilm?
Yeah.
Well, they,
He's got
but that's because they haven't,
I know,
I don't know, I guess when we get stuff back, if we want, because they'll have to report that they didn't spend that money, right?
Yeah,
So it'll come back and we can always reappropriate it, if we so desire. Yeah, or just, I don't know. All right.
law enforcement, you'll see that there's actually additional costs for law enforcement for compensation and FICA and all that. That is because when we were doing the 5% increases for people, I had failed to pick up that some of the people were going to get step increases between now and June 30th, which would also have 5% added on it. So that affected the compensation, the FICA, the retirement, all those things that are percents off the salary. But that was my fault for not considering that when I was adding 5% to the existing salary. The radios, you'll see that the reason that is added back in. Sheriff Craig originally asked for $25,000 in repairs, and I had cut it down to $15,000 based on his repair cost estimated for this year. But he reminded me that back when we went into that lease agreement with Enterprise, it was planned that anything that was unspent at the end of the year would be used to get additional new vehicles leased to keep the repair costs low. And when he said that, I remembered that conversation. So yes, they only expect to spend $15,000 this year, but they've already planned that $10,000 they don't spend will be used for additional Enterprise leases. So once you reminded me of that, I agreed. That's why I added it back in. And then he has several little tiny one-time cuts that I kind of hate to see. And then he has a permanent cut from the meth lab. He said at one time we were required to clean up meth labs, and I guess we aren't required to do that anymore. So that $1,000 is a permanent one we can take.
Okay.
It's come down from what it used to be, Used to it was like 2,500.
we put back to 69, right?
Yeah.
And the bottom two lines there are the revenue lines. The 34.5 is the revenue on 69.
Right.
The 9108 is what we expect to receive from the comp board. And again, this is me when I had figured out how much we expected to receive because of the 5% increase. I was basing it on the people and positions budgeted this year. But we've had some people who have retired who are at the top of the salary scale.
Right.
And we've hired in people at the bottom of the salary scale. So I have more coming back from the comp board than I think we will really get next year because our expenditures will be lower and therefore our revenues will be lower.
Gotcha.
So in reality, adding the cameras back in doesn't cost us as much as the 69.
Correct. We got 34.5.
So it only costs $34.
Correct.
Half of it.
Yeah. Well.
And then in courtroom security, again, I left some step increases out of the first budget.
Whoops.
And I added hospital. We lost an employee who wasn't taking hospitalization and added one who is, so I needed to, well actually it's a vacant position. We don't know if they're going to take hospitalization or not, but I would prefer to assume that they are. So that's why I added that one. And again, police uniforms are one-time cut. I just don't like these one-time cuts.
Yeah. But they help this year?
Not much.
I mean, I know.
Yeah,
Yeah, but if you take the one-time cuts from other, I mean, if we put it all back, we're back to 4%.
Well, except, here, go ahead. We've taken out some big ones. I mean, these anything under 1,000, I really can't see. I mean, we have 7692 savings out of county administrator. We have 27,000 savings out of electoral board and registrar.
I mean, this sheriff, when we do all that, just right off the top of my head, it's $1,500. That's what Brian, basically when you add everything back in, comes up to about $1,500 between the sheriff's courtroom security and $950, $1,000, $1, $2, $3, $5, $1,500, maybe $1,600 is what we're cutting one time.
Right.
I don't know if it's worth it either. I mean, you're gonna need ammunition.
And the cost of ammunition is going up from what I've heard.
Everything is.
Yeah,
Yeah, seriously. Sure, ammunition will go up, you're right.
Well, and with all the law changes that are coming too, making sure folks can get education and all that kind of stuff will be needed.
Yeah.
Well, except for that one permanent cut, I'd recommend he put back all his,
For the most part, whenever we have asked him to cut, he has always managed to reallocate and find things, so. So what's this with Mark?
no, Mark said at one time he was given $1,500 in miscellaneous, and he said it was to clean up a site where the people had put a dump.
Oh, yeah.
And he said it was for that one-time expenditure and has been in every budget since, and he doesn't really need it.
we'll take it.
That gets the green, that gets the green check.
So back up to the other two, where there's one-time cuts in or out. I'm confused, just so I can keep up my marks here.
My note is leave them all, put those things back in the budget.
Except for the permanent cut.
Two of them said,
Yeah, I mean,
Well, there are three, you two
okay,
and Justin and
Well,
Lloyd.
that was,
okay.
When they were talking, you were nodding.
Taking it back?
I was.
He doesn't want to be the third. He
Right.
would like to be the fourth. If someone else would please nod.
Yeah.
we put back our one-time cuts, that
Yeah.
150 and 200 and stuff like that.
Yeah, the 500
Because
goes
Just
up.
in that office, or are we looking at the others too?
I mean, I would do it in the Commissioner of Revenue and the Treasurer as well.
I like Cindy's ideology, if anything less than $1,000 is, I mean,
Yeah,
I know if you total them up, but we gotta have some kind of method here, because if you total them up, we're gonna find that in each area.
I mean, the bottom is, they're doing what we would do.
Well,
Well, they're doing what we said we wouldn't.
Right, exactly, that's what I mean, right.
well, I just want it to be fair across the board. We ask every agency, so basically, anybody that put in cuts for under $1,000 per line, we're putting back in.
I don't know that you could just say that across the board.
Well, then how are we attributing it fairly across the budget?
And I do agree with what Mr. Bill is saying, we asked them to do this, and I feel like there needs to be a level of mutual respect, and I think Cindy's done a good job of establishing that for us.
Yeah.
Well,
Personally,
they went beyond here, above and beyond.
Really good.
So,
Anytime where they identify permanent code, I'd definitely say,
Yeah,
yeah,
let's
let's
do
do
it.
it. Let's do it.
And I don't have a problem with that, each
Yeah.
department that has that. I'm just saying that if we're, you know, one-time cut all the way across from the sheriff's office, then should we, you know, for anything under 1,000, then if we're putting that back, then shouldn't we put it back in the others too?
I think so.
I didn't see
It
that.
depends on what situation you're in.
That's kinda how I am.
You know, I sit there and look at, like, the treasurer, let's say treasurer, for example, she says compensation for part-time. She can do that from here. Well, that may be a legitimate, she may actually not need it this year, I don't know. I'm not talking to her.
And if you don't, that goes to the end of the year balance.
Right.
Right.
If we leave it.
But it, like in her case, like travel and education, I had to cover education, she probably didn't get as, they probably weren't able to get it this year, and then we blocked them next year, it's just 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
I mean, I really hate to, any of those conventions or education stuff, I think we've lost a year, and now you just cut another year out.
And a lot
Not
of
just in
this,
her life.
like Dr. Footsteps has alluded to, you know, a lot of these changes are going to affect a lot of different offices, not just one. So,
General Assembly has changed a lot of things, not law enforcement, just.
exactly, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yep.
A lot that's going to
Yep.
affect a lot of places.
I want our people to be as prepared as possible.
So can I jump ahead at this 101,846 from social services? How did that happen? Just because I want to know.
Yeah, where are we going? I no disrespect.
Yeah, I know. I guess I know how I feel. I don't know that I can just say blanket across the board. I just can't. There's some things that may not be fitting for somebody else. It's not always, I don't know, they're not all children that you're trying to give equal amounts to. It's just not like that.
I understand that.
I mean, and I don't mean any disrespect at all, but
Yes.
sometimes,
Well, maybe we can give you a little more background on our understanding of what that is, and you can correct me if I missed something, but his total budget for social services will remain the same. What Chad's suggesting is moving around a little bit what's matched with what. And so in that process ends up with 101 in savings.
He's got some new information from the state, so he can actually put some of his expenditures, the programs with the state match is higher than the ones that they've been reporting it on currently. So it's apparently some new information he's received.
And there's some areas where the state is providing more funding on their side.
well, isn't that good news?
So it's an overall, technically it's a saving to us, but as far as his budgeted numbers, they're gonna be about the same.
Okay.
So I just wanted to clarify, it was not a suggestion of a lowered service level.
Oh, yeah,
I
I
just
just
wanted to
that.
make sure you all were aware.
Yeah.
That that's what he's proposing.
Going back again, Mr. Chairman, just so I know where we're at on the paper and can keep up. Personally, I would agree with Mr. Ryan in sticking with leaving anything under $1,000 and or the county administrator's recommendation. I think that's how I'm comfortable. And with that, the reason would be, we asked them to do this on an asking basis, and I feel like, as Mr. Booth has said, just since we asked them to do that, there's a level of trust that needs to be established there. And less than $1,000 is not gonna, at the end of the day, you're
Not gonna make it from 3 to 4, is it?
it's not gonna make a lot of difference, and I don't, as Mr. Yoder said, some of these one times and things, it's only gonna make it harder for us next year. So unless the county administrator, assistant county administrator has any other recommendations, I would stick to, it's less than 1,000, we leave it, and everything above that we take.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
I wouldn't either.
I'd say anything under 1,000, definitely leave. Anything over 1,000, let's look at and decide if it needs to be left.
Well, that's why I said,
Yeah.
on your guys' recommendation, because you've talked about them, you know. That would be my suggestion.
Everybody agree with that? New consensus on it, I guess.
I'd rather do it department by department.
Yeah, I'm for department by department.
Looks like you're sitting on that sharp fence post.
Yeah.
What you get paid the high dollars for.
Yeah,
Or you can say you don't have to pay money either way, and we just keep going like we're going. There's a lot of options.
That's fine, too.
we're asking them to do something that we said we weren't gonna do. We said we weren't gonna nickel and dime anything, you know, and they done went above and beyond with the cuts they made anyway. I know I've talked to a couple that said they made some cuts and they're willing to make some more, but because we've been good to them, you know. And I don't think we should abuse their trust.
Well, if I might, if there are particular items that kind of raise a flag to you that are under $1,000, if you want us to go back and, you know, get more information about that, we could do that. You know, there might be some extraneous, you know, $200 here and there, but if you want us to go back and look at some in particular, that kind of makes it easy.
So let me ask you something, Linda. Do you feel that everybody, and I'm not asking you for names, but do you think everybody really took this seriously above and beyond Cindy and Linda both? Do you feel like they really, really took it seriously?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's reflected here in what.
Yes.
Okay. That's
You say
kind of,
$250.
I know.
That's taking,
So when you see $100, to me, that's,
I know,
that's taking pretty serious.
I know.
Yeah.
personally, that's how I, not disrespecting your question.
No, I mean, that's what I wanted to get their impressions, you know.
I think I mentioned to some of you when I looked at what their current budgets look like and what their initial requests look
Yeah.
like, they're already
Right.
slimmer than I'm used to seeing.
Yeah.
We'll put it that way, and then for them to come back and try to come up with, okay, they asked, can I do one more thing? So
Right.
I really felt like they tried really hard. You know, we got a little bit of please don't, but, you know.
Right,
This done went beyond this,
yeah.
went beyond this.
We
time.
trimmed. Let's see, goodness gracious, how long have I been here? Probably 8 or 9 years ago, we trimmed really hard on some of these budgets, to the point that there was some irritated people up there.
Blood started to push it.
It was, we were bleeding the turnip pretty dry, you know? But we got our budget
Yeah.
balanced, and that was back when, you know, the last recession was going on. It was what we had to do. But I personally haven't seen a lot of growth in some of these departments, especially Treasury and Commission Revenue. I just feel like they've kind of maintained, probably clerk court too.
Yeah.
You go back to our problem, when the problem first reared its head back in the early 2000s.
Right,
You haven't seen a monstrous jump in anybody's budget.
yeah.
I mean, I can remember drag out fights for $100 in postage to the point that,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
a former elected official was quite upset over the fact that we cut $100 off postage. I mean, it was something after they retired, it still kept coming up.
Yeah.
I mean, we were trending. It was just,
I do too. But
we probably
everybody,
trended a little too far,
well, yeah, but
but we were
you were going through the entire thing, and everybody everybody had to turn.
Yeah.
You were desperate.
Yeah.
It was what happens in a recession.
Yeah.
It just, for some of these, I guess that's where my feeling is, for like Commissioner Revenue and Treasurer, I think their budgets are so tight right now. I mean, have been for years. I just hate to take anything away from them.
Alright.
And there may be others as we go through here that I wouldn't feel as strongly about because I think there's been some growth in their departments over the years. I guess that's why I say, it's nothing in particular, it's just, I really, especially Commissioner Revenue and Treasurer, I just feel like there hasn't been any growth over the years. And so when we're nickel and diamond, it's hard for me to do that. Even the ones like, just looking at Commissioner Revenues, you know, even some of the stuff that isn't one-time stuff, like, am I really gonna cut $100 off of her education, or their education? No,
For 200 off the telephone?
I know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, we can save 500 in the treasurer's office. We're not planning on doing anything with the tax deadlines, right?
Who knows right now?
I hope not. You know, tax deadlines for, you know, June and December.
I don't see us doing it this year.
I think we did it, and I think it was the right thing to do with what we did.
At the time.
That's right.
After, I mean, yes, we were impacted, but I don't think it was nearly as bad as any of us was afraid it was going to be. And that was part of the reason that we extended and.
Well, there too was when we was having the computer situation, and it was gonna be hard for them to print and get
Had that
everything
on
out.
top of
Yeah.
everything else. So, no, I don't see that we need to, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, keep the June and the December
Back to default.
back to.
Yeah.
You know, even after we extended it, at the original one, they almost collected as much as what they used to do.
Was the school asked to come in?
I didn't.
They're supposed to deliver their budget April 1.
Okay.
We can ask after that.
Yeah,
I went out, if I might, I went out and I met with Dr. Wheeler and Dave guy, and so they started going through some of their budget things with me, and we're talking about, they're continuing to try to shift things around to minimize the impact. And, so that they'll have something after they get through the court process.
so that'll give us 15 days to come to some kind of agreement so that usually, best I can remember, around there, they want to know by April 15th on their budget so they can sign contracts with the teachers.
And we have to
Somewhere
have
in
a
that
tax,
time frame. So
taxes due the 23rd, correct?
That's the real thing.
That's the real deadline. Yep.
Jump through all the hoops after that, that's when you like the tax.
Yep. Locked and loaded. Let's see.
So was that a decision on the tax date, at least for budgeting purposes?
What?
If there's, it sounded like you all were kind of deciding to not change the tax deadline, so that would be a $500 cut. You would go ahead. Yeah, it would be under one of the ones.
And then FICA would come off of that too, right? Because that would be $539.
Buddy, there it is.
Or will,
It's everything we've been looking for.
touchdown.
the 539 stay.
Nope,
Just back.
they go back. We get them.
Well, I mean, it stays on this paper is getting back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And travel and mileage is going back in.
Well, it all depends on which way. It all depends on which way Mr. Terman says go. If we're gonna go,
I don't see it, I think if it's under 1,000, then we should give it back to them.
on one time or?
Yeah.
On one-time cuts.
Yeah. or the one-time cuts.
One. Right.
So under the commissioner of revenue, everything is a one-time cut or not?
Not this one.
Just one?
2,000.
No, that's over 1,000.
So then you got the 1,000, you got 400, 4,500.
There's just so much in there that worries me.
Yeah.
The GIS, I mean, she needs, I think she needs this thing. Treasurer too, I mean. That could cost us more in the long run.
Absolutely.
Now, wait a minute, we put the travel knowledge back and the education and travel education seminars back in the treasurer, right?
Yep.
Well, then I think we need to put that back in the commissioner of revenue too.
Well, I would argue for that, but it's not a one-time cut. That's why I'm asking how we're doing this.
Well, that's why
That's why I asked, is it everything, is it all one-time cuts, or is it anything under 1,000?
I said anything under 1,000.
and that's what I said.
I think Mr.
But he
Thompson
said one-time cut, so he told the monkey wrench.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah. And anything over 1,000, we look at and discuss.
Right, individually.
Well, I would propose anything under 1,000 or under in the Commissioner Revenue's office
Goes back.
goes back into their budget.
I agree.
I don't have a problem with that.
All right, so that's,
So that's a plus, that's a plus, that's a plus, that's a plus, and that's a plus. Now,
field assessor is a one-time cut at 2, and then the DMV firewall software maintenance.
I think the firewall software, they have not spent that much this year.
Yeah, probably not.
I don't know that they spent that much on the field assessors either.
They haven't spent anything on
DMV,
the.
So we take it.
take it.
Keep those two and give the rest back.
Trying to see the
What
other.
about the field assessor? It's 3120.
They spent 11 out of 19 so far.
So that's probably got a little wiggle room.
Yeah, that's why she's probably saying one-time cut for this year. Grab it,
I'd leave that in there.
I think so.
so leave it in.
Leave it on our paper as,
Yeah, keep those two cuts.
in other words, make two cuts in that one, 2,000
And
and
4,500.
4,500.
And we're doing the electoral board and registrars. We're not doing the circuit court. Leave that
Yeah, because of the, yeah.
Yeah, we said leave the circuit court secretary
in.
in.
What about the microphone? It's not listed as a one-time cut, but.
I think, yeah,
I leave it.
I think both of those columns, like Supervisor Coleman said, that's just gonna rear its ugly head again once it's, I mean,
When you say leave it, does that mean put it back in?
Yeah. I know.
Either put it back in or
Let's
leave
leave
it
it
on
as
tape.
a cut. Yeah.
We're out. That's
We're
what
gonna
I'm
put it
saying.
back.
Yeah, right.
It's in.
What I'm writing is take cut or put back in budget.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
On the sheriff's office, the data entry specialist, $1,000, is that in or out? That's not a one-time cut.
Which one? The sheriff's office and entry 1,000.
That is a new position he's asking
Yeah, it's the
for.
new position.
Okay.
Yeah, he's cutting the salary.
He had asked 21 and now he's gone down to 20.
Okay.
So
we're gonna accept the cut? It's not a one-time.
it's a new position, so one thing you have to decide is it worth 20,000 for a new part-time position to do this job? And he's convinced me that they really could use somebody to do data entry to free up deputies to do more of their other work.
But he feels he could take $1,000 off.
But he feels like he can take 1,000 off.
It works out that good?
I'd like to.
cut stays.
Meth lab stays
Right,
as a
as
cut.
the cut.
And,
And we
body
gave
cameras
everything,
go back in.
And then all the other 150.
Yep.
went back in.
And then the 500 under courtrooms goes back in.
And for the police uniforms,
And we accept the 1,500 under the building.
correct? So on,
Animal control switched around and then added 1,300.
yeah.
Dale just explained to me that ammo's he had 2,800, I took 13 off, and he said, or I think it was 2,800. Anyway, he convinced me that he really needs what he'd asked for, that he had really gone through it the first time, and
Okay,
I believe it. I could either.
and then advertising and livestock claims go back in to the budget.
Well, it's not one-time cuts.
these are
Yeah, no.
reallocations between line items. It's not really,
Cutting.
he's
Not
saying
cutting.
he doesn't need advertising in Floyd Press anymore, he does it on websites and stuff. But you could really use that 200 and put it into office supplies. He doesn't have an office supplies line. That records, books, tags is what the treasurer's office spends for the dog tags they sell. He doesn't even have a line item for toner.
Right.
So he said he could really use that $200 just for paper and toner.
And he's taken from livestock claims and putting it in the veterinarian services
Exactly.
line.
He said they no longer
Okay.
do livestock claims, but they seem to have more and more things where by state code, they have to take it to a veterinarian.
Yeah. Okay, so they're going,
So we're accepting all of the
yeah,
changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, leave all it like it is.
yeah. Alright. Feel like I'm Lana. It's like, I get 5, but then they take 25. It's not happening.
And
Another reallocation.
I know.
And I had cut both of these quite a bit.
Right,
And I want to look at these because I don't know that he can afford to lose 2,500.
You are probably aware, a couple of folks have talked to me about, we've got some looming issues with some of our properties,
Yeah.
including the library parking lot, and
yeah,
some other things, the buildings out of parking.
yeah.
Maybe that'd be some of
Eventually,
that COVID capital money.
Eventually, my proposal is to go back to gravel down there.
Yeah, that's good.
True, whether we like it or
I
not.
It's getting there, it's getting there. I'm afraid we're gonna find out that's what's washed out underneath and let that dip spot go.
Tell you what, there hasn't even been any cars back.
Maybe they can use some of these gravel as busting tires and get rid of it.
Yeah. There you go.
I think they might be looking for a place to get rid of them.
Yeah, let's
Oh,
repurpose.
they don't have anything busted tires.
Ah.
But driving the ditch to avoid the race.
Thank goodness they don't have the ditch cleaned out, or you tear your car all to pieces.
One of those things, those plants.
Yeah, that's what I was just about
Well,
to
that's another thing, I was told they were starting to clean that up.
say. Yeah, they were out on 221. Yeah, I was out there today too.
They're a long way from getting there though.
Is it contracted?
No,
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
the local guys, it's taking forever. I mean, they just don't have people to pay for it.
Well, it's
They didn't
in
bring in,
there.
I thought you talked about you were looking.
They had.
Yeah.
They looked at it.
There's been sightings and others, that's also.
Yeah.
They're looking. Is the key word.
Anyway, looking at his expenditures for the year so far, I can't see taking that 2,500 from him.
Yeah.
He doesn't, he only has 9,000 left for the next 4 months.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Putting back the 2,500.
Yep.
yeah.
It's like it.
Not accepting any of that or changes.
So he was trying to come up with something.
That was good.
Creative.
Absolutely.
So recreation, we're not accepting any of those cuts, because it's all one time.
Things get back to somewhat normal, he's gonna need every penny of it.
I agree.
That's what I was thinking. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Basically, the same thing in community development. Recognition, education, travel, gas and oil. Well, I'm sure gas and oil, of course, they said might be permanent cut, I don't know.
On the electric cars?
Well, $138 is all that they're allocated for gas. I mean, that's their entire gas bill. But to be honest, they usually use one of the county vehicles.
right.
And when we fill it up, we charge it to admin, we don't charge it to them. So I guess that's why it's being a permanent cut, but. Well, occasionally you have to be at mileage when you travel, but
Occasionally.
occasionally, so I don't know,
Just leave it.
I would, I mean, $138.
Yeah, exactly.
In other words, put it back in.
Yeah.
Yeah, put it back in. What about the 1,000?
I put that
Who
back
already
in.
decided?
Yeah, that's going 1,000.
They put them two back in.
EDA, I just don't know.
I understand 6094. I was just not a huge fan of that line.
Yeah, I know.
I feel like we've got enough opportunities right now.
Yeah,
And I felt like that. I guess maybe should come back each time. 'Cause that's, I mean, that's a, I get it. I appreciate the work and the effort and the diligence. I guess it's just the title of catch. I guess it's like,
Yeah, I hear you. Yep. Gotta come up with better.
Which one?
New opportunities that emerge.
Yeah, so it's kind of a line item that we use to do for grants. Like if a grant opportunity comes along, that's where we pull, like matching funds, that's where we pull that matching funds from.
I guess that was, I'm sure the thinking originally was say you wouldn't have to run back to the board
Exactly,
every time.
exactly.
And I get that.
But,
Well, and I would suspect, although Tim can correct me, that you don't always realize the grants is available with 3 weeks' notice.
Sure.
So that's probably what part of the thinking is.
Mhm.
Personally, the number of ones I've written is less than a week's notices.
yeah.
Well,
well, are we leaving that department as is, as on this page,
Accepting all the cuts.
accepting the cut?
That's what I-
I don't know.
Other than the training and travel, that's the only thing that,
Yeah.
the bottom four I would accept. I just don't know about the training and travel aspect, because that's,
Yeah.
and especially with travel, I mean, you don't know where.
Put the 1,500 back in the budget and accept the others as is.
Can I ask about the Commerce Park maintenance though? I don't,
I'm sure that there needs to be a lot of maintenance right now.
I don't know. I mean, what is that? Just the mowing?
Mowing and
No,
everything
bush
else.
hogging, the,
Yeah.
so we decided to cut that one due to, there's gonna be a lot of things going on, and we really, next year, we really won't need to do a lot of maintenance, because there'll be a lot of things going on the lots that we typically do the maintenance on.
I got you.
That's what I was
Okay, yeah, that's why I wanted, yeah, clarification. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. We put the 1,500 back in.
Yep.
And leave
Take
everything
everything
else
else.
like it is.
Yeah.
So that gives us 22,500.
Why, on the Tourism Development Council, why is there an additional money?
Because we have 36,000 in there, but the agreement is that it'll be a certain percentage of fiscal year 20 funds. So when Pat did the math, it was 36,682.
But that's not for next year. We don't have an agreement for next year.
She said it, apparently it's based on what your actual was.
The current agreement, but it ends in the end of
Correct.
June.
Right.
Correct.
Hadn't been anything approved going forward. I guess she's assuming something's gonna be.
Well, she needed to base it on something, so the way the agreement had been in the
Right, she's
past.
basing it on the structure of the
Correct.
agreement, but,
Correct.
yeah.
So if I might have an update on that is both Kayla and I have been asked to put together what we think as the town and county administrators about what the role of that office should be and what we hope to get from them. And we're supposed to submit that by April 1st. And then we've been invited to their meeting April 15th.
And where did that come from?
To whose meeting?
Mr. Patton? Is that
Well, they don't, the tourism council don't get to decide that.
No.
It's an agreement, I mean, no offense, but there's an agreement.
That's all I got.
Mr. Patton can think of it if
I'm
he
still
wants
struggling
to.
with who called me, so.
I'm sure he would love to dictate the way that this works.
Yeah, it ain't gonna happen.
That is the request that, we'll put this on, so I plan to.
Well, the tourism council may have discussed that, because I was on the Zoom call.
No, not really. It was not discussed.
I lost the end of that meeting.
Yeah, so I have on my calendar to be somewhere April 15th to talk about tourism, or to listen to them talk about, somebody talk about tourism.
Alright,
That's all I got.
She's making that clear.
I don't know.
Smart.
Correct me if I'm saying this right or wrong or
Okay, all
whatever.
right.
I can understand if the Chamber of Commerce requested some kind of guidelines on what's expected of that job. Because technically, they're supposed to be over it for the
Fiscal
agreement,
agent and
Correct.
employer.
not the tourism council.
Correct.
Tourism council,
Is there just to advise, basically, on the tourism issues. But
Mr.
as far
Patton
as,
was just elected chair of that council.
uh,
Mr. Patton was just elected chair of that
that's
council.
We wanted
all
to
I'm
have-
doing. I just wanna make sure I got this straight in my head. The position under the agreement was, and whether they understood it or not, but it was my understanding that person was supposed to answer basically to the chamber.
That's the way,
That is
that's the way
the way
the
it was
agreement
written.
That's the way it's written.
That is the way.
So last year,
I could understand a presentation to the chamber on what the county and town expects of that position.
Correct.
And if it's gonna continue like it is and chamber's gonna do it, they need one because they need to pick up the ball and run with it.
That's
But that doesn't address the other issues with that position.
just for some background, in the last year, Mr. Patton and I were putting on a personnel committee to figure out try to identify whose role is, how this should work. And so going back and talking to Mr. Cornwell, who drew the original agreement, and his legal advice was the chamber controls personnel.
Right.
The tourism council does not control personnel whatsoever.
Right.
And the chamber came back and said they're not really interested in that, from what I could tell.
They're not interested in it nor continuing the agreement.
No, they're interested in continuing agreement, but they don't want,
Well, not as written.
not as, that's what I gather. Now, I may be off base, but they've never
Assumed the role.
assumed the role of controlling, of taking on an employee.
Right.
The tourism council has done that to a degree because
Nobody else did.
Yeah, but per the agreement,
Well,
they're
the
really
agreement
not
has worked the
operating.
way the agreements work.
Right.
So, I mean, that's gotta be addressed.
Now, I will say that the executive committee of the chamber did go into closed session on Monday to discuss this very topic. So there is discussion being had in the chamber. I was on the call as I was traveling and hit the Yanceyville and you get no signal at all. So I dropped. I wasn't going to be, I was told I was, as an ex officio, I was not to be in the closed session. So that made sense. So Yeah, that's where we're at, but yeah, I agree.
They made no announcements or anything after the closed session.
No, not that I was aware of. Nope, no email came to me
But the bottom line, this agreement is between us
and the town.
and the town and the chamber. And so if there's any discussions about forming that together, it needs to be between the chairman and the mayor and the county administrator and the
Executive
the
director.
executive director and the town manager.
Right.
You know, that's who it needs to be with. It doesn't need to be with the tourism council, because I mean,
That's what I'm saying. Well, that was leading to my point. You're right. I agree with what you just said. And since this agreement ends, what, June 30th?
Yeah.
I think. Not that you don't have anything else to do.
I mean, it may just be a matter of kind of Mr. and the town manager discussing it, you know.
You know, bringing it back.
But it doesn't need, nothing can be dictated by the tourism.
Correct.
Well, the bottom line, you got three choices. Town take it over, county take it over, or the chamber do what it's supposed to,
And we leave it as it is.
and leave it as it is.
But that's the key.
They don't
If
want
it's written the way it currently is, then the chamber has to step up.
Right.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying, that's the three choices.
Those are the three choices, correct. Yep.
Or each body could set up, you know, we could form a committee to come back with a plan if we want to do that. Well, I don't know, I just, at some point, we've got to address it. But I don't think.
Yeah, the time's running
Time's
short.
ticking.
So it's a tax.
Because if we don't have some kind of an agreement in place by June 30th, then everything is dissolved.
Yep.
I mean, I've said all along, I think either the town or the county should take it over. That's my personal opinion right now, because
It's my personal
this
opinion
is,
as well.
this is the biggest fear I have on the whole thing. I think we've been really, really fortunate that we have really good people as a person, Vicky is the treasurer of the chamber.
John is.
And John is executive director, and they're both leaders, what I understand.
Yep.
And so, without knowing who's gonna be in that committee of public funds for that, is
Dicey,
nice.
dicey. And it's not just a little bit. But,
Well,
on
I
the
think
flip
I
side,
said the last time, I didn't have a problem either way, whether, you know,
yeah, county or town.
county or town. If the chamber doesn't want to do it, I don't have a problem with
I
town
think the
or
chamber
county.
wants to do it. I think the chamber would prefer to keep it the way it is, right, the way it's operating, not the way it's written.
Well, if they want to keep it operating and they're a part of it, they're gonna have to step up.
Yeah, I just don't.
Right.
I mean,
That's my deal.
that's only fair to the employee.
That's
Yeah.
my deal.
I just think that the position is so important right now. It has been, the position has grown to a point, the seed was planted and the position has gotten to a point, and I think it was very evident that during COVID, the position was invaluable to our economic development department and our county as a whole in terms of helping to keep businesses afloat, and
And we're required to spend money.
and we are required
So
to,
it's,
so yeah,
so let's make it work for
Yep.
everybody.
absolutely.
However it has to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
You're running the show, Dr. Mills. It's not the tourism council.
Correct.
yeah.
You're the term to run the show on this one.
Okay.
You don't answer to somebody else.
And Will and Kayla on the other side.
And I did talk to Will earlier this week.
Okay.
Just kind of fill him in on what I thought was happening and trying to give him a little bit of a push to take some.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, what, we're having, lunch on Monday.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, he said, I told him, I said, reach out to the appropriate people down here and try to, I just feel like we've got to do something.
Yep.
It's not my place to make it happen, but I was hoping to jumpstart it.
Yeah.
So for right now, leave the 682.
That's adding it in
Yeah.
as opposed to,
Well, we have to spend
It's almost like it is,
60%.
yeah, 60%
Of our transient lodging on
Tourism.
on the top tax, right.
and that's what this is based on. So whether it goes into this agreement or some other,
Yeah.
But it's almost like it needs to go into this fiscal year, doesn't it?
We have this 2-year lag because fiscal year 21 is not closed, we're using fiscal year 20.
Right,
data to do
right.
it. So this is correct, but the 682 will get us to that 60%.
and then we'll just have to.
And there's other ways we can use that tour, other things that also qualify as tourism money too.
Sure.
Yeah.
There is.
So,
But it has to go somewhere.
as long as it's tourism oriented or falls in that category, you're right.
Yeah. All right.
Alright, sorry.
Or extension?
EMS, right? I mean,
No, extension.
well,
Well, both of those-
Yeah, right, stay.
automatic.
Yeah.
And EMS, we
We
already
already put that down.
Yeah.
Fire and rescue.
Cooperative extension, we're putting up this.
less.
That's back, yeah, back in.
I'll make you some more stuff. I look forward to the next round.
Yeah. Same thing on my budget. I got stuff scribbled away.
Fire and rescue, this 13,000 was a new request. They usually get 170 and it asked for 183,000 and the 13,000 was because they wanted to buy a group term life insurance for the firefighters. And they said they would forego asking for it this year, but they'd turn around and ask for it again next year.
They've never had it before.
They've
Don't
never
they
had
have
it
it for the state?
Huh?
Don't they have a policy for the state?
Get ready to say.
I mean, I sat through at Vaco,
Before.
at Vaco, I sat through, I don't know how many meetings on that. At one of our conferences, how the state was doing, and it had to, it wasn't group life, it was, if you
They have
passed from an injury or passed from something that could be
that
tied
passed
back
at
to
the
it.
state level, yes, but this is. a
This is
group-
for anything.
Yes,
If I fell off a roof, put shingles in it.
correct.
Oh,
Okay, that makes sense.
The line of
It's not
duty-
strictly job
Job
related.
related, because the state policy, if I passed away from cancer and I had been a firefighter, I could go back and get
Right,
coverage from that.
yeah.
It didn't mean I burned up in a fire, it meant,
right.
they had, even heart disease, you could tie back to being exposed, yeah.
Right.
So there was a lot of things that
But it was tied to the job
It was tied to the
per se.
job.
Yeah.
I had a heart attack when I was, after being in the fire service for 20 years, I could say it was stress related. And my widow would get
Right.
it, my beneficiary would get something, so.
And if you're, and I think if I remember correctly, even when as far, if you, in a volunteer situation, you were on your way to the station to run a call,
And you, right,
and you had an accident and were killed, you were covered.
That's right.
And if you were returning home from a call,
Anything related to that,
but it
or
had
subsequently related to that.
Right.
So cancer.
food exposure or
Right.
some kind of exposure,
And they had
yes.
quite the list of things.
The state already did that, so this is
This is to cover, if
whatever.
I was driving to Pennsylvania to see my grandfather and was killed on the interstate, I got you.
So we take it this year.
Yeah, I think we leave that one just like it in Maria, like it is. And we definitely don't wanna mess with the next one.
Can we cut any more?
And then the E911 is a real thing where
yeah,
Kevin
the,
had negotiated a lower,
the tower,
yeah.
Lower price on
Yeah. Mhm. And then the compensation dispatcher was the same thing as the other places where there was
Yeah.
a step increase this year. And then on the next page, there were some other items that Dr. Millsap and I just wanted to bring to your attention. Make sure you were aware that it's still in there. We've already talked about the data entry. In solid waste, right now, the budget includes 41,621 for salary and benefits for an additional solid waste employee. that was something Cheryl had requested, and I had put his request through because you were talking about having the landfill open for extended hours, plus they work so much overtime right now. But that, I don't know if you guys want to have an additional.
Well, if we leave that in, then I think we definitely require the extended hours.
Absolutely.
And if we're not gonna do the extended hours and whatever, then we take it out.
Yeah. I
And there's
think-
many people wanting that to stay
yeah.
up on Saturdays and stuff. You know,
Yep, I think all of us have heard that.
Yeah.
It has
Yeah.
to be connected,
Absolutely,
Yes, it
I
has to
agree.
be connected.
I agree.
or for me. it
Yep,
would.
absolutely. Yeah, that has to be communicated
So,
for
so
sure.
you're okay with leaving it in for the time being, but with the understanding the landfill is gonna be open on Saturday?
Correct,
Full hours.
full hours, yeah.
Full, not full. Full.
Full.
I got
F-U-L-L.
No, I was making sure I understood.
Well,
I
and,
just want afternoon hours, that's my big thing, I don't care about the morning, but.
well, and, with the additional employee, what's the minimum employees that needs to be at the transfer station when it's open? I know you need one at the transfer station, and you probably need one at the recycling, and you can get back.
I'll tell you what, I went there again today and twice the supervisor goes and there's nobody there to accept my recycling.
Well, I know.
Yeah. I've been there before.
My point being that we had this employee, we had the time on Saturday, but could we extend hours during the week? In other words, have somebody instead of coming in at 7, they come in at 10 and
And
stay
open
a
it
couple
till
hours
7.
more in the evening.
Yeah, I think 7 is good.
Maybe
Maybe during
we
the,
also have to work on the schedule proposal.
Like maybe
Yeah.
something along those lines.
Yep.
With the understanding that
working with Cheryl and
adding an employee, but wanting a couple nights, later evening hours
And so.
I mean, during the daylight savings times, I think it makes sense.
During
Yeah,
this
exactly.
time of year.
Yeah.
Especially.
But in the winter time, I don't see, yeah,
And you know, on Saturdays, a lot of people that works during the week don't get everything ready to come to their landfill to mid.
No, they did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
sure. Yeah, right. It's in the green box.
can vouch that that happens.
Yeah.
And they get there at 11:30 and the gates is
you
shut
can
down.
see them go right into the green box.
Well, I can vouch also it does go on some properties.
Yeah.
Depending on what it is.
But I do think that I think you're right. Closing at 4:30 or 4 during the week it'd be nice to have one day a week.
Well, I'm not saying every day, just maybe 1 or 2 or whatever works out
Yeah,
with the
Tuesday or
schedule.
Thursday or something, that would be open late till 6 o'clock or something.
Maybe midweek would work better.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, not everybody has off on Saturday.
Well, that's it. That's what I was getting ready to say. Some people work 6 days a week, some 7 days a
I'm
week.
just trying to, hey, how about farmers?
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about factory workers too.
Well, a lot of people work second job.
Yeah.
But I think that anything we can do there in that regard will help on filling up our green boxes and having it tossed over the bank. So the longer the hours we can have there, the better off we're going.
And it also help with the white goods being dumped beside the green boxes too, because you've got 2 opportunities, more opportunity now. You get in from work, even if you had it loaded on the truck, you still can't get there before they close.
Correct.
And
Once it's on the pickup, it's going somewhere else.
It's
It doesn't matter where.
that's a general rule.
That is
Feed and everything
Unless you
else.
got your daddy's trailer and you load it up, it sits there for 2 months.
Sounds like a personal problem.
I think definitely leave that one in, but make it understood, just let them know it's expanded hours.
So what I'm gonna take away from that
Good
is
luck.
that we're gonna leave in increasing the staff, but the transfer, I'm gonna work with them on having more customer-focused hours at the transfer.
There you go.
Well, that's okay. She's almost as good as Steve, if you want to fancy words together.
Customer focused hours, I love it.
Another thing I wanted to point out to you, we did get some budget cuts from the library. They were less than a couple of $100 per one. I just didn't get them in time to put them on the sheet. But they had also stepped up to the plate.
Right, but we'll add them back.
We'll add
We
that.
already did add
They
them
were
back.
doing, I got a request from the Crooked Road for $10,000 that just came in.
Send that to the tourism council.
That's part of where that tourism money usually goes.
Used to go.
Used to go.
Used to go.
It has recently.
Nope. We cut it last year.
And then yesterday, I got a notice that we had to certify our health insurance by April 1. And I wrote back and said, I never even got the renewal rates. Turns out they sent it to they had mistyped my email address. So they sent it to me today. And so I've redone the sheet so you can make some decisions. Unfortunately, while health insurance costs had gone down, our rates essentially have barely gone down.
How is that possible?
They talked about, at the last conference call I'd been on some time ago, it was a couple months ago, and they knew their costs were down, but they didn't want to do something like bring our premiums way down and then turn around and
Right, that makes
spike them up again. They were talking about trying to level them, so, you know, keep them kind of the same this year and the next year, kind of as things happen.
Yeah.
It only amounts to, if we were to keep 85%, it only amounts to a $2 a month savings for the employee and a $5 a month savings for the county. When I get it,
Increase.
so when I get it for the whole,
Keep their profit margin.
I know, they're gonna be kind enough just to keep our money.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
So when I did it for the whole thing, if I were to change it, all the county for a whole year was only going to save $5,478 with these new rates. But anyway, here, I'll just
And that's staying with what we have.
Staying with the 85.
Stay with the
85%.
Okay.
And I'm supposed to certify this by April 1, but I don't see that as a possibility. We can ask for an extension. And I think you should have 4 pages.
Oh, I don't.
Not again.
Okay, bring that back. Bring that
You've
back.
got what our rates are now at
There's your
85,
fault.
at 80, and at 90.
Thanks.
Pass that down to Lauren.
I was just counting, that's 3.
But one of the things I need to find out from you is when is the PSA meeting, when's the social services meeting? Because all the boards need to adopt, and then I need to request an extension.
No, I got 4.
Did you? Oh, okay. I must miss counting.
You get 4?
I got 3.
That's what I
Here's your
counted.
90. You missed the 90.
I got 80, 90, 85, 90.
There it is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So when's the next PSA meeting?
April 8th.
Okay, when's the next social services meeting?
The first Thursday, whatever. that is.
April 1st. April Fool's Day.
See.
So, with it being due April 1, I need to request an extension at least until April 15th. I'm not sure when town council meets.
They meet April
They meet the
1st and 3rd.
first Thursday and 3rd.
Yeah,
So
so the
they'll have a
1st,
meeting
the
the
1st.
same night I have social services.
Yeah, the 1st and the 15th.
So I need to get this to everybody and maybe ask for an extension till April 15th.
Well, I don't see, I'll go out on them, I don't see the PSA increase in their percentage of pay given.
Oh, no, not at all.
I can't speak for the social services.
So I'm going to request an extension, and then we need to set, you know, are you guys going to go with the 85%? And
That's what we're
and do we
doing.
want to do the open enrollment April 15th to May 15th?
I'd like to stay with what we've done, that's my opinion. I definitely don't wanna go down on health insurance at this time, it's juncture. So, that's my feeling.
We had talked about moving it up to 90%.
I don't see that. I mean, that's just my
I
opinion.
understand.
I just
I
can't.
would agree with you if you let me.
We want to
I just
What I
don't
was
see
gonna
it.
say, we had talked about last year about bumping it up, we bumped it up 5%, doing 5 this year, but given the circumstances, I think we need to leave it at 85.
Can we make motions during budget workshop, or do we have to wait till the regular meeting?
I just said,
I think we're good at that.
session.
Okay.
We're actually in session.
It's a more informal type of session.
So does anyone want to,
So I moved.
So,
85%.
and he's done saying,
And then what the second was,
That dude,
and are you also motioning that we keep the same two plans we currently have? Or the three plans, we have the 250, the 1,000, and the high deductible?
That was my motion.
Yes, okay.
and that they would get the open enrollment.
Everything she said.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
that's what
awesome.
he said, I believe.
all right, so the motion is to keep the three plans, go with the 85% as current in an open enrollment.
You're interpreting this fairly quickly.
She's catching on fire.
And approving an extension till April 15th.
Yeah.
So we request for an extension.
I heard.
Wonderful, April 15th. All right. All right, so, Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
all right. Miss Cook in Cook.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Booth?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
all right, thank you. I'm gonna take this for. Here you go.
You want to talk about any of that?
Yeah. Tomorrow.
Yeah, do you want to keep talking, or are you ready to break and finish tomorrow?
How much more have you got?
All that in red.
We've got the conversation about salaries and why positions have extra local pay on them and how that came to be and what we want to do about that in the future.
You also have kind of the IT discussion
Yeah.
and an update on the cigarette tax, some potential projections. And also Cindy and I had a conversation with Davenport and some of their thoughts about maybe some of the new money and
That's how we worked at 6.
That's,
Oh, I thought it was 6.
are we going until what time tomorrow? I am gonna have to leave at noon. Did you have that meeting you have to go to?
I thought we had, no, that was this past week.
Oh,
I thought we agreed to like 3-hour meetings.
okay, good.
You know, like
Whatever.
8:30 to
All right, so
11.
8:30 to 11:30. Yeah, I just have to be over at Bradford University at around noon-ish, 1:30, something like that.
Like Mr. Combs said, we stay till 6 and then take a break, so Jerry
some
can
dinner.
eat.
I'm gonna get down in a few minutes.
Yep.
Everybody's in there.
I'm not gonna promise
Should
that.
we call about the,
Davenport.
not, what do you want to do that? I was going to say the salary thing, but if you want to do that.
You want to talk about hard stuff or just easy stuff? Are you tired or not?
Easy stuff.
It is all,
Well,
There's
I'll tell
easy
you.
stuff.
yeah, I wanna hear that.
Yeah, let's hear the easy
Well,
stuff.
I will say, relatively speaking, I can just give you an update on the cigarette tax discussion. How's that? There's no decisions. So, again, there's still kind of a continuing discussion about maybe doing this on a regional level, but there's certainly no decisions and it's still kind of a conversation. Kevin Byrne at the TDC put together some numbers for basically tax rate scenarios from 10 cents all the way up to the max of 60. Give you lots of information. It is based on what Charlottesville saw. So I'm going to tell you now, I think they're a little high because we are not on interstates and we don't have a lot of big boxes sitting around. But it gives you kind of an order of magnitude. And so where the discussion has kind of been around the 40 cents, since that's what Christiansburg is at, I believe. And so they're kind of thinking about, well, if everybody's going to go along, maybe they'll kind of stay where they are. But that's an informal conversation. So the estimate that Kevin put forward at 40 cents was right under $147,000 for 40 cents for a full year.
For Floyd.
For Floyd County, and then the town would be $4,200. And again, I tend to think that's a little high for the reasons I mentioned.
Yeah.
And it does not take out cost, to your earlier point. But we've been making some calls, Baker's been making some calls, we're trying to kind of.
So the town would collect it within the town limits.
And see, this is based just straight on population times 40 cents times what has been generated per person in Charlottesville, so that's the one thing.
I'm trying to think of the number of real retailers in the town limits versus the county.
Yeah.
There's only a handful in the county.
Yeah.
You get Slaughters, Willis,
I don't know.
Midway, Copper Hill, Check.
Front,
If
West End.
If the town assesses one in the town, now if they don't, if I remember correctly from my days of ordinance and stuff, if the town doesn't assess it, then the county can.
Okay.
But if the town assesses it, the county can't in the town limits. So that's gonna drop, well, Slaughters is outside of the town limits.
Food Line.
West End.
Food Line's in
I
there.
know, I'm just saying what's in town. Food Line, and then
Circle K.
Yes,
two gas stations.
Yeah.
Circle K and
And then
Floyd
whatever they
Express.
sell at Republic up here, they sell cigars.
Right.
I don't know about any.
Cigarette wrappers, I don't know if that, how, if other stuff goes with it. But anyway, the numbers don't seem to
They seem
work.
high to me, they seem pretty high.
Well, the town numbers and the.
Oh, well,
I
that's
wonder if
because
those
it's,
aren't reversed.
Well, no,
Oh.
they're based on population,
it's just based on population. See,
but the
so
tax
that's-
itself wouldn't be based on population.
No,
It's
so
just
that's,
based on retail.
yeah, so I'll go back and look at it a little bit more, but that's kind
Yeah,
of.
because when people come to visit
So
Floyd,
the
they're
numbers,
buying.
the numbers may be right, but I'm gonna guess the Food Line
Is the top.
is the top one.
Absolutely.
And then it wouldn't surprise me if the other two gas stations here were the second two biggest in the county.
Yeah. Oh.
So that,
Although, Slaughters may pull a good amount, yeah.
I'm just trying to think. If it's, you said about 4,000 or 5,000 for the town?
Yeah, but again, it's just based
I
on
bet
the
the town would
fact
be
that town's.
70,000. You know,
It's gonna be based on it.
Yeah.
I bet it would be pretty close to equal.
But if you add it to all tobacco products, which it does,
Right.
they call it a cigarette tax, but it's all.
All tobacco
Right.
products.
I thought, and I may be wrong, but you might double check with Kevin and them. I thought in that state legislation, they limited it to 40 cents.
That's what
I don't think you have an option to go above 40 cents
It seems like.
unless something changed.
Somebody can go to 60, I don't know if it's ever, because Christiansburg, I think there was some discussion, there might be some people in Christiansburg thinking about it.
Huh.
Well,
So I don't know if that's different.
I don't know how it applies to, but the legislation I saw had it
Was
limited to 40.
I thought Charlottesville had higher than anybody. They was talking about 40 here, but then they was talking about 60 in Charlottesville.
Well, and now it may be different for cities.
Maybe
That's-
cities can do it.
Yeah,
So
might be because
Bradford
they already
possibly
have
can do it.
authority, that they can kind of
Christiansburg's
go
a
up.
township, aren't they?
I
Yeah,
think we need to
versus-
go to the max, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's my personal.
Oh, of course, don't, be
We're gonna
done
go to
with
the
it.
trouble to the,
And you can't,
Well,
don't change it until they raise the limit.
Yeah, the expense, I think we have to the expense of doing this and setting it up
That's the part.
justifies the max.
Well, and if we have to do it on our own, the expense is not gonna
I mean,
justify
obviously,
you.
you
No.
know, whatever
Right.
But you know, the Village Mart, I believe would be the highest one in the county. It seems like every time I go in there,
Somebody's
that's what they
buying.
buy, is cigarettes. And
I just know if you work in Slaughter's, there's a lot of people that do.
That's what I'm
grocery stores
saying.
like that. But
Yeah.
I'm thinking food lines.
Food Line has so many more.
But I know a lot of workers coming food, going
Right.
home at nights and stuff to the Village Mart.
To get a pack of
Beer and
cigarettes.
cigarettes is what they grab.
So, well, I will keep you apprised of that, but as I said, I'm talking about the commissioner revenue, a little bit about it. So,
So if the commissioner, if our commissioner revenue, treasurer's office was involved, and then the town would get some of the money, could we charge some of the expenses to the town perhaps? That might be an interesting.
Yeah,
Well,
service charge.
if the town is doing it on their own, then the cigarettes in town would have to have their own stamp.
Right.
I understand that, I'm just saying, if that was to happen, there may be no way that we can work together on it too.
Well, possibly. I'm interested to see how Charlottesville handles the stamp issue. That's
Between
what I,
Albemarle County and the city of Charlottesville?
do they use the same stamp as the county? And how they're handling that. I can't believe that you got somebody, manufacturer, bringing in a truckload of cigarettes and they're reopening them. I still think it has to be done at the manufacturer.
you are correct, it is done primarily at the wholesale level.
Right.
So the wholesaler would contact the treasurer's office and buy X amount of stamps. They would apply them, and then you also have to have, or generally have to have an option for retail as well. So you would have to keep some available, but the experience in Charlottesville is that the vast majority are done
That's
from
all the wholesaler,
wholesalers.
and they don't have anything to do with it other than they sell them as stamps.
So as a carton of cigarettes is sold, does the stamp go on the carton of unopened cigarettes?
That thing that I read said that they got, that machine opens it, stamps each individual
pack.
pack and seals it back.
Oh. So then a carton of cigarettes can be bought by a town business and then they can open them and sell them by the pack.
Or
Or sell them by the carton.
And same thing on packs of tobacco.
Gotcha.
They come boxed up, they have to have some way to open that box, stamp each pack,
Yeah.
and close the
Stuff
pack.
comes in a row. It's gonna be hard to put it all back to shrink wrap.
Well, see, that's
That's where
another,
it's gotta be done.
At the wholesale
At the
level.
wholesale.
So, yeah, it's primarily
before
done.
it's ever
Yeah.
boxed up or
Right.
whatever.
And they
And
said
that
there's,
makes a lot more sense.
you know, that their experience is they just have to keep those because they're kind of random, you know, small sales of odd things and it doesn't have a stamp. But the vast majority is done that way. And enforcement is generally just on a kind of complaint basis.
They're always coming up with a new product and putting it out there on the market, just temporary to see how it sells and evaluating it. So
Well, I
that's
mean,
where,
or a little shop sells cigars or.
Right.
Yeah, you can-
You know, it looks like the commissioner just about have to have a sort of a survey of how much each one of them sells so they know how many stamps there were.
well, that's where that gets back into also right now they're calculating on the population,
Right.
but that's where you get back into calculating on actual sales.
Yeah.
The major manufacturer, the distributors would know how much they're sending. So
Bring that.
That's
they could
true.
get- They would tell the commissioner.
Yep.
The little stores that might sell a cigar or something that would come through the normal route.
I don't think that would probably make too much of a difference.
No, I mean, that's what the commissioner would keep on having.
Right. Right.
I can
Get that
assure
all
you
set up.
tobacco companies have very well-paid economists.
Yes.
Yes, they do.
Get that all set up and in place, that'll tell us how to do it when we got to stamp all them alcohol bottles.
No, when we go to the marijuana stand.
Well, yeah, then that's the one that's,
That one,
staying away on that one. Lord.
But you know, checking that alcohol thing over in the States will be a hoggish on that.
And just
Well,
They've been always on tobacco for a long time.
I was questioning on the hemp and hemp products.
Yeah.
As to whether the local government can tax those under the cigarette tax.
Tobacco tax.
it's tobacco.
Yeah, tobacco tax, but has the state put anything in place yet for a local hemp tax?
Or anybody.
Or they,
Well, I was just asking.
There's nothing coming out on marijuana stuff yet.
I haven't seen anything, so.
I thought if marijuana sales passed, it wouldn't take effect for like 3 or 4 years.
I don't know what this sweeping legislation is going to tell.
Yeah, I think this term is correct. The last thing I heard was potentially 2024.
Yeah, better get
Well, we ought to have something in place and be ready.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. We'll be ahead of it.
Yeah.
Or an easy street and that comes in.
So we'll be.
will get.
We'll have to have two taxes. One tax for homegrown and one brought in the country.
Yeah, the home ground don't get taxed either, the liquor brother.
No, they
I
don't.
believe the cartels will collect any for us.
We're not interested.
Well, yeah. They won't have to dig as many tunnels under the wall down in Texas.
It's really they fight too.
Okay, you got 5 to 7 minutes.
What's the quick one?
We haven't heard back from ACE yet as to whether they're going to continue to allow it to be used for non-certificated programs, so we're still waiting on that one.
What is the holdup, do you think? Do you have any idea?
It's always this time of year that they're doing it, always run kind of parallel to budget, we just haven't heard yet. I don't know if this is a fast one or not, but we got Tech Squared's new invoice and their price has gone up. Yeah, it's $14,600 a month now, starting, I don't remember when it starts, but it's.
What was that?
I think, yeah,
14,000 a month?
14,600 something,
How much of an increase is that?
about $1,200
Yeah,
a
it's
month.
about $1,200 extra.
Well, that's an awful big employee salary. I still want to explore that option, putting an employee. I mean,
So,
175 too.
yeah.
You said 14.6, right?
Yes.
Times 12, $175,200.
So we've been kind of kicking this around the office a little bit, so, as you can imagine. First of all, I did do as you all asked and talked to Dr. Wheeler, and he mentioned that this has come up before. But that basically they have one full, in terms of people who actually do that type of work as opposed to teaching computer science, that they pretty much have the one full-time, full person and then a tech. And that's pretty much all he's got in his budget. So that didn't sound like a lot of extra bandwidth there.
That was your impression?
That was my impression that was certainly my impression of what he was communicating to me, that basically they've got one more senior person in the tech and they're kind of responsible for all the IT work for the school system at all the schools.
Okay.
In the past, there had been, some of you remember there might have been more, but all those folks have been converted to teaching in the computer science program.
And I bet that one person stays covered up all the time with the school system.
He pretty much does.
Has our IT firm completed all the upgrades and everything since the ransom try to use the right terminology.
That's more a Tabitha question. I can answer some other things about the new contract, but I don't know, we don't know. We can check on that for you, if they've done all the upgrades and all that. What we are aware of is, Kevin and I have been looking at that contract pretty closely because of some of the issues that are being raised around election security.
Correct.
And there's going to be some potential costs associated with that. There are many things that amount of money is supposed to be covering them doing for us that it heretofore does not appear have been happening.
Correct.
They're supposed to be helping us with policy manuals and training for cybersecurity and all of that. So I think kind of our current thinking is if maybe we continue this for another year, but we make sure we get all that utilized and get all those things done that the elections board and all that need done, and then plan to next year convert to keeping them for serious emergency things and having someone on staff. And the reason is Amy came over and met with me, and they have a list of over 400 things that they have to do related to related to cybersecurity for the election. And there's a lot of that could potentially come into the work to fund that contract already.
Okay.
You went to where I was going. If they haven't completed the upgrades and stuff, definitely don't want to bring somebody new into the middle.
No, but
But
If they haven't completed the upgrades that they're contracted to do, then
we got.
We got some problems.
I understand that, but I'm not inclined to agree to their increase until they complete the original contract stuff.
I would like to
I
see a punch list of what they've done, where we're supposed to go, and then a specified proposal or justification for their increase.
Yeah.
At this point, I mean, we were put in a really bad situation. And they got paid handsomely to do the job that they did. And then we continue to utilize them. And if we don't have, I agree with you, not just a punch list. I mean, I want to see what, when they are going to complete the contract that we're on with everything that's supposed to have been done. I don't like the idea of not having, and then signing a new contract?
Right.
I'm not sure, and maybe I should clarify, I don't know if there's like still upgrade type things. What we were looking at was a lot of things around policy manuals and training and those kind of pieces.
Well, that's all
Part of the
upgrades.
original.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's not, I guess to clarify, that's not that there's not certain software that's supposed to be here or certain hardware. It's not those kind of things.
Well,
But we'll follow up.
do we
some
know?
more.
It could be.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know.
Right.
I mean, I know that sounds funny, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've kind of gone on blind faith with this firm,
No,
or am I?
I think they have been providing information. I just don't know that we have, know where that information is. I think they provide monthly information as to what they have done, but we have not put our hands on that information at this point. Yeah, and I do in terms of the upgrade kind of things. I mean, I get something every day that says we are green, the backup is good. I mean, so that type of work, I don't mean to suggest that type of work isn't being done. I just think there's some things that are in the contract that for whatever reason we have not been taking advantage of, that now because, we should do anyway, but specifically now because we have these cybersecurity issues around election systems, that we might want to consider using their expertise a little bit longer.
But I
But
think
making them do it.
I think there are people out in the workaday world that have expertise just like Tech Squared does. I don't know that I agree wholeheartedly on your assessment, Jerry, about not wanting to hire a person in here to be on our staff to do the work. I don't know. I mean, I think we have to
I'm
look.
referring to the stuff under the current contract
Gotcha.
that hasn't been done.
Right.
I'm not opposed to putting a person in that position. I'm just saying, and you said it best, we need to know the original contract, the original stuff that was supposed to be done, has it been completed?
Right.
And if it hasn't, then, but
Timeline.
before we enter into any, even talk about another contract or an increase or anything else.
I feel like it's probably just, they're probably not gonna just advertise what they haven't done.
Well, they're gonna have to tell us.
Well, they're gonna have to
You
tell
know,
us,
they're
yeah.
like, well, they've got a contract, they're gonna ask for these policies, so.
Well, it's time now.
Yeah,
It's-
so that is, whatever we decide, that's on to be.
If it's on us for not asking, it's time to ask.
I mean, this has been a situation that is, you know, I mean, it's not, it's an ongoing thing that's happened, and there's been a lot of transition, and I understand that completely, but I think it's something that we definitely have to
And I'm
zero in on.
gonna add to it, I'm not ungrateful for what they did.
No,
I mean, they came in and far as I know, did a great job considering.
right,
I would be interested in knowing what we could get in terms of employees for the same budget.
yeah,
To me, that's really the,
I'm thinking leave one full-time and a part-time, maybe two full-time.
yeah, 175 too.
I don't know how you do it without having two full. I don't know how you do it.
I just don't,
I don't know
I
how
know
you do it
that,
without having two full.
I know it's a.
What I'm saying is,
Very well,
if it can be part-time and two full-time for
I
that
just
same
don't know what it
salary.
is in this area, in this region.
Yeah.
That's the, I could probably ask a few people that would possibly know, but it's,
I mean, that would give us an idea.
Their salary scale, have anything on
You know, interest rates and stuff, but you know, we could find out what they paid their one full-time person at the school board.
I mean, even if
it?
we're
Well,
asking.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we
Surrounding
could.
towns,
And the technician.
So that's
Yeah.
possibility. You know, we're talking about an employee, but it could be under a contractual situation that takes it out of the normal stream of an employee. There's
Like
not.
that 99 employee kind of.
Could be.
Well, the situation with the school is, what I was wondering with the school is, if we hire another full-time person or another full-time and part-time person or something, would they then be able to work with us back and forth to cover?
I kind of suggested could we maybe share one and set it and then it seemed to decide anyway. It wasn't a no, but.
Flagpole, just.
The other thing that really makes me wonder, that I wondered about in the past with surrounding counties, if there's some way to work with, maybe there's other counties in the same position we are,
Mhm.
as far as, we could hire a full-time person, but what happens if they're on vacation, or, you know, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
Is there a way to, I mean,
Share resources.
yeah, you
Yeah.
might be able to just have an agreement with the surrounding county that says, I mean, it goes back to when the flooding happened back here. Pulaski sent their building inspectors over to help us because ours was on vacation that week on the Little River, and to look at houses, to condemn houses if they weren't. Maybe there's some type of agreement that we can enter into with another county that would work. I don't know, but it might be.
I would say probably Montgomery County has somebody that, I mean, I'm sure they have more than one.
Even the library has.
Kevin might be a resource for,
Remember at one time, you know, Calvin sent their building.
I mean, for this IT.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes,
there's,
Kevin and I have been talking quite a bit about it.
Or maybe it's not IT.
Yes, we have, and so, yeah, so Kevin and I have been talking about this and looking at the tech squared contract, and then, Amy's met with me and she's met with Kevin a little bit as well, trying to go through the list and,
And I know there's 400 items, but a lot of the 400 items, as I understand, I mean, some of them are small. I mean,
some of, yeah.
you know, some of them, I mean, there's 400 items, but they're not all,
Right,
you know, like this big juggernaut.
no,
So,
they're just things though that take time, like writing procedures.
correct.
It doesn't take forever, but it does take.
But it takes time, right, right. And I remember when that whole stuff began, and our guy from the elections department, the Department of Elections was here, whatever you think about it, but he said, could you do these? And he said, oh yeah, we could write up, procedures, but I think that was part of what these procedures were supposed to be. And, we just didn't stay on it, I guess. I don't know.
Thank you.
So I guess we can probably take the motion to adjourn till 7 o'clock.
Just-
Yeah, just